Materialism is not a particularly aspirational quality, but our possessions are often reflective of our tastes and priorities and, as a result, tell a story about us, consciously or not. This is a series about those things that we have, that we care about, that help us be who we are or want to be. This is Conspicuous Consumption. I've had a fascination with animal costumes for as long as I can remember. Sure, mascots and that general style were interesting, but what really caught my attention were the ones where you could see the wearer's face, whether a character on some kids show or some kind of Halloween costume. And despite being a fandom with a general affinity for dressing up as animals, furry doesn't really pay much mind to this specific niche. That's fine, but also why, when I discovered a cache of unused fur while sorting through our storage area, I knew what I needed to do. I've done my share of fursuit DIY before, with results ranging from this can never see the light of day to resounding success, but a majority have fallen squarely in the middle. Even so, that was enough to give me the confidence to try to turn this pile of fabric into the skunk costume of my dreams. I started with a few rough sketches to get a sense of how to best use the fabric that I had, because one of my goals was to make this mostly work without needing to buy more fur. And once I had a general sense of where I was going, I used a pair of nicely fitting coveralls as an outline for the body that I traced onto some muslin to figure out markings and divisions for the front and back, and then ensure that there was enough fur for everything. After all that time spent patterning and cutting, the actual assembly went relatively quickly and kind of felt like a reward, and there was a really surreal moment after stitching up the arms and legs where I could suddenly take this thing I'd been working on for days and wear it, and that's kind of a remarkable feeling when most of your work tends to be in two dimensions. I was really nervous about making the hood because I was thinking about how long it took me to do a similar project last year, but this time I already had the pattern from before, so I could just start with that. Figuring out the exact right shape and how to attach it was nerve-wracking, but after a lot of pinning and checking and repinning and double-checking, it went together and everything lined up and the bodysuit was basically done. The hands and feet were next, and this is where the scope creep really started to come into play. Originally, I was just going to do some simple fur mitts and booties and have them fully attached, but I started to realize I might want to have some flexibility and decided to make them zip off. I also wanted them to have a little more volume, and that's why I went with some foam backing for structure. The whole process was definitely an ordeal because I could envision the result I wanted, but every step of getting there felt like a battle. I used cardboard to figure out the patterns before recreating them in muslin to test assembly, then moved on to cutting the pieces from the fur, felt, and foam. Putting these together was a huge challenge because they were too thick to pin but also needed to line up really precisely, so I ended up hand stitching a good chunk of them, which took forever, but at least now I know how to backstitch. Getting the zippers attached was the final trial, and when I finally got everything together it was such a huge relief. Suddenly I had a skunk of my very own. Well, most of one. You can't really decide to make a skunk costume without having to deal with what has to be one of the most difficult tales to do justice, and when I started I set some fabric aside with the intent of returning to it at some point down the road. As cute as it would be in theory, I knew I didn't want anything permanently attached because if you're sitting a lot, it's always going to be in the way, so I thought maybe I'd just make a pillow or something and have that as a prop, I guess. But then I had the idea, what if it was a backpack? And this was sort of the catalyst for suddenly turning this project from something that never leaves the house into a real thing I would want to wear in other settings, hence that newfound interest in flexibility. So that's what I did. The outside is fur, but it's backed with Cordura panels, which is a fairly common bag material. The straps are also actual backpack straps, so in theory this could be used as a real backpack, though I don't expect that to be a very common scenario. The remaining hurdle was that this still isn't very stiff or structured, but inflatable camping pillows help give it the shape while also being super light and packable. And then, after all this, suddenly it was done. It's hard to believe, honestly, and I'm super happy with it and excited to be a skunk. It's still a little ways out, but if you see this around Midwest Fur Fest this year, it's me and you should say hi. I'm also doing a panel there about open-faced animal costumes, and I hope you'll check that out too. Until then, I have to figure out what to do with all this newfound free time I have. Talk to you later.